What is going on, everyone? We have finally made it time for playoff football in the NFL. We know our matchups heading into this wild card weekend. Two sets of games on Saturday, two on Sunday. Should be a great weekend. And as always, I've got my game by game picks outright on the spread. I've got some locks for you. So let's get right into this and talk playoff matchups. Starting off with our Saturday games, we look at the Titans at the Kansas City Chiefs, our first game of the day. And if you're a Kansas City fan, I think you got to really be happy about this matchup and the way that the seedings worked out. Also, Jaguars 2 included in that. Both upper seeds were helped with that Baltimore loss, and that allowed the Titans and the Bills to sneak into that wild card positioning in the AFC. But as far as breaking this game down, I'll start with the Titans. Now, they've been an offense that hasn't really blown your socks off this entire season, and I think they're an offense that's driven by their running game, and I can make the same argument for the Chiefs, but in order, I think, for the Titans to have a chance in this game, because in my opinion, this game is going to come down to which offense has the better day. I don't think either of these defenses is a shutdown defense. If anything, this game being in Kansas City, I got to give the edge to the Chiefs a little bit. So for that reason, to me, it's going to come down to Marcus Mariota, and he doesn't really have that playoff experience. I think in order for the Titans to have a shot and to pull off the upset here, they're going to have Mariota be a stud through the air, but then also through the ground, and allowing on top of that running game with Henry, with DeMarco Murray to get going. I think that's the only way that the Titans are going to be able to win. And honestly, I haven't seen that combination really click too many times in the regular season. That's why I got to give the edge to the Chiefs here. And I will say, though, the Chiefs, when we saw them lose in the middle of the season, I think a lot of the problems started with Kareem Hunt not having success in the running game, and then Alex Smith just trying to do too much. But even in that scenario, even if the Chiefs don't play their A game here, I still got to give them the edge. They have the more experienced squad. I think they have the more explosive squad. And like I said, home field advantage. I do think it becomes a factor, especially in an environment like Kansas City in the playoffs. So outright, I will take the Kansas City Chiefs in the first game of the playoffs. Now, as far as the spread is concerned, Chiefs at -7.5, and just a little bit over a touchdown. I do think that once this game gets late, that's when the Chiefs are going to separate themselves. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit of a struggle in the first half, but then, like I said, Chiefs late separate themselves. I think when it's all said and done, right around a 10-point margin of victory for the Chiefs is what I have. So give me the Chiefs to cover the spread on their end. Next, we go to our Saturday night game, which features the Falcons at the Rams. And before breaking this game down, I will say I think this will be the most exciting game of Wild Card Weekend. And if I had to pick a potential upset, it would be right here, believe it or not. Now, I think the main thing will come down to playoff experience. I think that's the only way the Falcons can potentially get this upset. But even with that said, I do like the Rams ultimately. And honestly, if I had to pick right now which two teams would represent the NFC in the divisional round, I would go with the Rams and the Saints. But regardless, let's actually break down this game. And starting with the Rams, let's talk the home team here. We know the story. It's a young squad that's found a lot of success with Sean McVay taking over as the head coach. He's gotten much better play from Jared Goff. Todd Gurley in MVP consideration. That offensive line greatly improved. They've added Woods, they've added Sammy Watkins, and that defense playing good right now. And then on the other side of the football, we've got the Falcons, last year's Super Bowl runner-ups, and they've been up and down all year. At one point in time, we were liking what we were seeing. Julio Jones, Devonta Freeman, Tavon Coleman, Matt Ryan, they've obviously got the weapons, but it's been a matter of making it click, because honestly, there might not be a more up and down team offensively than the Falcons. They have the talent to put up 40 points on you, but when you've looked at their box scores, it's mostly been around 20 points that they've been putting up, right around there. So to me, it's going to really matter as to what kind of Matty Ice shows up here. He hasn't, in terms of numbers, been anything spectacular all season long. And honestly, the way that the Falcons, their best chance to win this game is if Matt Ryan shows up, if the Matt Ryan from last year's playoff shows up, and if Julio Jones has a huge game, and if Devonta Freeman or Tavon Coleman, whoever it is, can alleviate some pressure from the passing game. To me, that's the success here. And on top of that, the Falcons, their biggest strength in this game will be their previous playoff experience. I kind of alluded to it before. I think in terms of an upset, that's their best leg to lean on because they've been here before. They have a coach that's been here before. They're facing a young team, and I honestly do think playoff experience makes a difference. For a young squad that hasn't been there, that hasn't experienced it before, the moment can get too big. So if there is a shot, the Falcons have to capitalize on it. Now, ultimately, I will go ahead and I will take the Rams. They've been the more consistent team all season long. This is a home game for them, and I will stick with them. On paper, they should have this game covered. As far as the spread goes here, however, -5.5 for the Rams. And looking at this game, I think it'll be a very close game. I think it'll be decided late. For that reason, I got to go with the Falcons on the spread. So give me the Rams outright, but the Falcons on the spread. Now looking at our Sunday matchups, I actually think that these are some of the easier games to predict, but we'll see. I might be completely wrong. Regardless, though, looking at our first matchup, we've got the Bills at the Jacksonville Jaguars. And breaking this one down, let's start with this. Let's all be honest here. The Bills were lucky to get into the playoffs. They needed a lot of things to break their way, and that's exactly what happened. And if you're a Jacksonville fan, you got to be ecstatic about this matchup, not only because it's the Bills, but also because LaShawn McCoy could likely miss this game. And even if he does play, he probably won't be 100%. And we all know the importance of LaShawn McCoy to this Bills offense. He is without a doubt their most explosive offensive playmaker. On top of that, the Bills aren't that far removed from benching Tyrod Taylor. We all remember the success that was because how could you forget Peterman's performance? Now, what's the reward? All right, they faced that Jaguars defense that was dominating in the regular season. Now, obviously, that dominant performance kind of leveled off in the last couple of weeks, but you can make the argument that that was kind of strategic, especially last week versus the Titans. That was a calculated, risk by the Jaguars team, and it paid off in terms of playoff matchups. But regardless, offensively, looking at this game, you got to give the edge to the Jaguars. They've played better all season long. Bortles had a good December. I think he carries that momentum into the playoffs. And regardless, I do think offensively, Leonard Fournette, he'll be able to carry the load. And on top of that, Jaguars might not even need Blake Bortles to step up and, have a fourth quarter kind of lock it up performance. I think their defense alone will be able to carry this game. Defensively, this game being at home, you got to give the edge to the Jaguars. Their defense has been their best weapon all season long, and I don't see any reason why that won't be the case here. Like I said, the Bills likely will be short-handed here, and if they are, the Jaguars defense, I fully anticipate them to have a field day. So for that reason, I like the Jaguars here in this game outright. And then as far as the spread's concerned, a little bit high, -7.5. But ultimately, like I said, the Jaguars are a good playoff team in terms of how they are built. They can run the ball, and then they can play great defense. And right now, especially in the early rounds of the playoffs, I think that formula will do them wonders. I like them also on the spread to cover. So give me them outright, and then give me the Jags also on the spread. And finally, getting to our last playoff game, we've got the Panthers at the Saints. And honestly, I think this is probably the easiest game to predict, but we'll see. I might be wrong. Now, before we even get into matchups, I think the first thing that I have to mention is the venue here, because that Superdome is a very tough place to go ahead and play in the regular season. Now transfer that over into the playoffs. I think you multiply that tenfold, because the atmosphere that's going to be buzzing in New Orleans, that crowd, I think it's going to play into helping the Saints out with getting the Panthers offense flustered, causing some false starts, some penalties, having issues getting calls across. But we'll see. As far as the matchup goes, overall though, the Saints did sweep the Panthers in the regular season, and I don't think that was a fluke. If you look up the matchups scoring wise, the Saints almost doubled up the Panthers. I think it was somewhere around 67 to low 30s in terms of how much they outscored them by. And offensively, the Saints have been the much better side all year long. They've been a lot more consistent, and it starts with those running backs, Kamara and Ingram. They are excellent runners, but also pass catchers. Now, comparing that to the Panthers' running game, they are a run-first team, and as much as I like Christian McCaffrey, he is a pass catcher first. I think he's similar to what Alvin Kamara is, but he's just not as good of a physical runner. What the difference is there. And then Jonathan Stewart, I think Mark Ingram is the better guy. I think he's a better pass catcher. And then on top of that, Drew Brees versus Cam Newton. I think Brees has more weapons around him. He's still got Michael Thomas. I think Ted Ginn can blow off the top of any defense at this point in time still, even as he's getting older. And the only way, I'm going to say this right now, the only way that the Panthers have a chance pulling off this upset is if Cam Newton has the game of his life, and not through the air, but mainly through the ground game. Because if you make Cam Newton one-dimensional, he is a below average passer of the football. The one way that the Panthers can make mismatches for that Saints defense is if Cam rushes for about 100 yards, honestly. And that's the only way that they'll be in that game. And honestly, even if it goes to that, I think it still might be a tight game. Because Cam, not the most accurate passer. That Saints defense, much improved. And we've seen it all year long with that Panthers defense. Once you put them up against a very good offense, against a very good passer of the football, they kind of crumble. Their strength is the front seven, but that secondary can be exploited all day long. And I think that's exactly what Drew Brees will do. For that reason, I give the Saints the edge all around. I know it's tough to beat a team 3 times in 1 year, but honestly, if I was a betting man, I would feel very comfortable going with the Saints in this game outright on the spread. However you want to chalk it up, I like the Saints in every aspect of this game. So give me the Saints to win outright. The spread, it's -6. Wouldn't be surprised if it's a double-digit margin of victory for the Saints. So give me the Saints on the spread as well. So with that, we've wrapped up our matchup pick'ems. But now let's transition to locks for this weekend, starting with the Panthers at the Saints. And look, I mentioned it before, the Saints have swept the Panthers so far twice. Neither of those times has really been that close. Point-wise, it's been, honestly, garbage time points where the Panthers have made it respectable. And the Saints have been the more consistent team all year long. I don't expect that to change. I look for the Saints to beat the Panthers a third time, not only outright, but actually on the spread as well. Wouldn't be surprised if it's a double-digit margin of victory. And then finally, if I had to add one more lock of the week, I would favor the Jaguars over the Bills. Again, this is really predicated on the fact that LaShawn McCoy probably won't be 100%, which makes me also lean towards the Jaguars in terms of the spread pick as well. So with that, we come to an end in terms of our locks of the week. Let me know what you guys thought. Do you agree on my locks, on my pick'ems outright? If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments section. And as always, if you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in future vids.